but yeah, I mean, looking forward to speaking with you about investing and owning, tons of businesses, opening a restaurant every month. We own a bunch of strip malls, triple net investments, the whole board, expanding all across the state of Iowa and Texas, and we just keep on growing.
What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Invest Iowa. Today I have Justin Sloan with me, and we're going to talk about businesses and commercial real estate, a little bit of almost everything, and how he's building businesses that are cash flowing and differently from your typical multifamily property, from your typical, well, no, you also do triple net leasing, but you'll answer those questions for me better than I can. So thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you taking the time to take this interview.
Yeah, thanks so much. I appreciate you reaching out.
Walk me through who Justin is.
Yeah, I'm a simple Iowa guy, born and raised in Cedar Rapids, and have just continued to grow over the years and compound with the people around me. So right out of high school, I started my own cell phone business and grew that to multiple locations all across the state. From that, kind of parlayed it into real estate, and at the age of 32, walked out of my final retail store, planning on just hanging out at the golf course. And then over the last couple of years, I've gotten really into the franchise and restaurant game, and now we're opening one of those a month. So just continuing to take the skill sets that we've learned and grow and compound with those around us.
Interesting. So walk me through that story. So you started your first business was a phone business. How did that
Yeah.
get started?
Yeah, so I was actually a senior in high school. It was kind of funny because I wasn't even 18 yet. I was getting ready to go in to be a senior. And I was working in a local mall, and I had a prepaid cell phone. I couldn't even get my own contract. So, but anyways, I went and applied, and they said, you can't work here till you're 18. And luckily they bent a couple rules because I was going to be 18 in a couple weeks. And so I started selling cell phones as a senior in high school, and I did really well at it. And after being there for a couple years, ended up running a couple stores, and then decided that I wanted to do my own thing and created my own store. I was the only employee for the first 4 months. Took every penny that I had and bought cell phone cases and cabinets and a couple computers, and we opened our first store and just continued to grow from there.
Okay, so first you went into the business and then you opened your own business.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really good point that you make there, though, that most people don't realize is I kind of got paid to learn. And so many times when you're starting a business, you can go and work somewhere and essentially they're paying you and teaching you at the same time. And then you can use that skill set to go on and do your own thing. So after I had kind of I really maxed out my position there. I was over, like I said, a couple stores, but the district or VP type of level was not in play for me in the low 20s. And so it was just a matter of going and doing my own thing.
Okay, how long did that take you? Is this a transition of how many years?
Just a few. I was 21, 22 when I made the decision to start my own. And then I ran those for about 11 years.
Okay, what are your biggest lessons of opening that business? Do you still have that business?
No, the cell phone industry just kind of consolidated, and I saw the writing on the wall. So we made an exit about 6 years ago. But I used those funds to compound real estate while we were kind of winding down the cell phone business.
Okay,
As far as biggest lessons, I mean, geez, we've made every mistake possibly can, and I'm going to continue to make more mistakes every single day. But the key is just, learn from those mistakes and get better every single time. And I'm not afraid to make mistakes. I'm not afraid to fail. Every time that we try something, we get better and better. And as we're continuing to compound right now, it gets pretty intense.
How do you make a business sellable?
Yeah, so I mean, you actually have to start by making it sellable. I think this is a really interesting thing right now, as all across the country, there's a lot of people retiring and a lot of small business owners that don't have sellable businesses because it's just been them inside the business. And essentially, if you buy their business, you're buying a job. So one of the things that we're doing is, so I'm scaling Everbowl, and I'm sure we'll talk about that. But I actually started with the idea of selling it in mind. Now, I don't know if that's going to be 3 years from now or 10 years from now. But the reality is that I need to make it so that I can be replaced, so that somebody can walk in and that the business still works, even if they're not there or I'm not there. And so I've started by hiring a head of operations, and we have our own accounting and all this kind of stuff from day one, so that if I don't walk into a store for the next 3 months, our investors still get paid. They're still winning. They're still crushing. And the more that we can make it where somebody else can walk in, take over something without a single point of failure, that's how you win.
And then for that first business that you started, you didn't have the experience. How was that? How was was it difficult to sell your business? How did that come across?
Yeah, so when we wound down that business, so the business was iWireless, which you probably might date you a little bit, but it was Iowa Wireless, and then they kind of went a little more regional, became iWireless. But the company really started to struggle in the late terms because they didn't have the national presence and the funding to keep upgrading their towers. So the writing was on the wall that T-Mobile was going to come in and take them over. And so over the course of a couple years, I did, I sold a store here, I closed a store here, I actually gave one store to corporate because I own the strip mall in return for a 5-year lease at a reasonable rent. And so we just did a bunch of different things. Unfortunately, the cell phone business was not a big exit for me. And I'm pretty honest about that. Just, I mean, again, you're going to have some big wins and some losses. I've had other ones that are huge wins. But the cell phone, it generated a lot of revenue, but not a big exit price just due to the carrier that I chose. If I would have chosen Verizon or T-Mobile from day one, we would have had a nice exit because those companies are still around today. But unfortunately, the smaller regional carriers, which fortunately for me, a smaller regional carrier is what allowed me to open my own store, and to
Mm.
go in and to do this process and to grow at the rate that I did. I would not have had those same opportunities with Verizon, but I also did not get the same exit as I would have if I had a Verizon.
But the learning experience, it stays on forever.
Yeah, I mean that's why now as I'm building this next one, it's like I've got the brand, we've got the process, we've got the fun, we've got it all set up from day one. Where I mean it's going to be something very, very valuable as we continue to grow this and build a brand across the country.
Okay, this is super interesting. Most people want to start their own business. What is your approach to starting an own business, and like how do you know a business model is going to work from your perspective?
Yeah, so I mean, most businesses are very similar, whether it's real estate investing or a retail store or whatever, right? You have income and you have expenses, and then there's a process in there for how you get those income and how you control those expenses, right? In multifamily, you can have to worry about repairs and vacancies and evictions and all these other kind of things. In restaurants, we have to worry about labor and cost of goods, but they're all line items where essentially you're looking for a repeatable system. And when I got started in real estate, I was buying single family, 3-bed, 1-bath slab homes with one or two stall garages. And I would buy the same house over and over and over again. And they would all have the same paint color, the same carpet, the same cabinets, the same appliances. Nobody knew it, but it was the same thing over and over and over again. And I take that same approach to what we're doing right now with restaurants, right? I find 1,000 square foot boxes. They're anchored by certain people with certain traffic counts and certain demographics. We build them out. We know what they will do based upon that. We know what our expenses are that we can control. We know what our profit will be at the end. Now it's just a matter of how many times can we do it over and over and over again. So as people are getting ready to start businesses, it's important that you build out the business model and talk to other people, right? I mean, nobody's doing anything for the first time. If you're opening a restaurant, so is 1,000 other people in the country. Find them, talk to other people that own restaurants. Figure out, put your business plan against theirs. See if it makes any sense. Back that when I was doing real estate early on, what did I do? I was talking to other real estate investors, asking them to look over my deals. Does this make sense? Does it not? Do you think I can get these kind of rents?
Right.
What are my expenses? And then working that backwards into a repeatable model. The key is repeatable. Because if I buy a single family one day, I buy a fourplex the next day, I buy a strip mall the next day, I buy this, I'm all over the place.
Okay.
Whereas if you can find a niche and just crush that niche, I mean, we had dozens of single family houses that were literally the same house, but nobody knew it. And it was great for me because anytime an air conditioner went out, guess what? It was the same air conditioner. Anytime this happened, it was the same that. And we built the system so you can plug and play. And the more that you can plug and play, the more efficient you can be.
Okay, what about those businesses that have a high skill uh, ticket item? Those businesses that are selling things that are not your repetition type of business.
So those businesses in general are harder to sell when you have higher skilled labor. For example, in restaurants, what's really nice is our normal people can be trained in just a few days, and we have great management teams in place. But in some business models, you have, in cell phones was a perfect example. Our average person was 4 to 6 months to train.
Oh,
right? Because you
damn.
have to know every phone, every plan, every phone that was sold, every plan that was sold, every feature, everything, right? And it's completely different with what we do with restaurants. So I purposely look for more businesses that can be, that can have anybody work at them, right?
That's
And
your
have less
niche.
specialized labor, because the more specialized labor that you have, the more that the employees can control the business. And I've seen it time and time again where at a fitness facility, well, those instructors have all the relationships with the clients. And if those instructors leave, so do all the clients, right? Same thing with haircutting. If you've all of a sudden got a salon and you're, high-end stylists and stuff like that, if they decide they want to go start their own salon or go rent a chair somewhere else, boom, there goes all your revenue. And so you have to be really, really careful having too many of your eggs in certain baskets of high skilled items. If you're looking at selling, now, if you're looking at owning a salon and having other couple people around you, do it, absolutely. But if you're doing what I'm doing, which is the entire, and I'm going to build dozens of these restaurants, if not 100 of them. And so it's very important for us to have the same repeatable systems. And I like the labor model that we use better.
Right. And I think most people, if they're watching this, they're trying to look for that repeatable business that gives them an exit strategy. Ultimately, it all breaks down to either cash or cash flow, right?
Yep.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, cash flow is number one for me, and
Okay.
it's number one for my investors too. And that's honestly why I've made the pivot in the last 18 to 24 months away from real estate, because everyone was chasing these record high rents and record low cap rates, and they're just not that profitable and they're not cash flowing all that well. Whereas with our restaurants, we use private funding, so they're debt free. As we scale them, we're able to pay investors. They get their portion of depreciation. They're aligned with us because they're true owners in the business. And what's important right now is they're getting cash flow when nobody else is. I'm hearing of capital calls all over the places and distributions being paused, property taxes going through the roof, insurance going through all this kind of stuff. Guess what? I don't have to worry about any of those kind of things right now because we're in a whole different ball game. I'm actually going and taking advantage of landlords that overpaid for buildings that are trying to get these crazy record rents. We're going in and beating them up because they're sitting there vacant right now.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Especially with Airbnb being so low in the next couple of months. I don't know what they're gonna do about that. But that's besides the point. Talk to me about Everbowl.
Yeah, Everbowl.
And anything that I did, I want to know everything about the business.
Yeah, I love this company. I'm bit by the Everbowl bug. So Everbowl is bowls of things that have been around forever. Nothing processed, nothing refined. It's trying to get Mother Nature as close to the consumers as we can. I call it Chipotle of fruit.
Yeah.
But about
Yeah.
2 years ago, I was in Phoenix in the middle of the pandemic, and I met the owner of Everbowl, and we had a really interesting conversation where every restaurant was starting to close down and lay off people, and he had 20 some of these open, was getting ready to franchise, and said, when everybody else is closing things down, this is when we go. And I was like, okay, this makes sense to me, right? I can get on board because now we're getting leases in places where businesses were going out. We could go take over better locations for lower prices, build this model. And then conveniently, Drew Brees came in and purchased a portion of the company along with the rights to many states. And essentially, over the last couple of years, we've just gotten to work day by day, opening another restaurant, another one, another one. Now there's 70 some across the country, more than 100 by the end of this year. 200 next year. We're just going to continue to grow this brand day by day, serving people bowls of things that have been around forever.
Right. I watched an entire Alex Hormozzi video and this it was so interesting that the way that like the cups need to be a certain size for the average consumer to spend more on certain things. That was so interesting to me.
Yeah, the food industry is really interesting. And especially as, over the last couple of years, products have gone up 30, 40, 50%. So, but how do you still make it so that customers can get a fair price for their meals? And one of the things with Everbowl is, some people look at us as kind of a dessert type of options because we have acai and a lot of frozen bases and things like that. But Everbowl is meant to be a meal replacement option. And so with a meal replacement option, we need to be in that $10 to $12 range. And so, it is absolutely a game of what's the right amount, what's the right toppings, what's the mix of different things. And you want to be really careful because you don't want to short the consumer, but you also have to find profitability. And
Yeah.
if your bowls are 50% COGS and your labor is 20% and you've got, rent at 10, 15% of franchise, then there's no money left. right? And so it's a fine balance between giving the customers as much as you possibly can while also still finding profitability. And one of the cool things that we're able to do as we're scaling at such a high level is I don't negotiate one restaurant, right? We're negotiating 70. So when we go to suppliers, they get to sell to 70 of us, right? And soon to be a couple
Oh,
hundred of us. And so we're able to get much better buying options, better supply chains, better things that are actually helping us keep, whenever everybody else is raising prices, we've been able to keep our prices. I have not raised my prices once since I opened my first store in 2021.
wow, 2021. How, what's that conversation like with the suppliers? Because you have so much leverage.
You know, what's fortunate for me is I don't have to do a lot of that anymore because
Okay.
the company is to the point where they have supply chain people that literally work on that all for the franchisees. And I think that's an important point that you made, though, is because of the fact that I'm part of a franchise system, we're all doing the same thing all across the country, right? We're selling the same products, the same experience, the same build outs, the same everything. And so what happens is at a big level, I mean, essentially it's, do you want to be part of our growth or not? And that's all there is to it.
What's your average net operating income in these stores?
So, because of the fact that I own the rights to the state of Iowa and the state of Texas, and I actually sell franchisees, I'm legally not allowed to
Fair
tell
enough.
people
Fair enough. Fair enough.
what they can make from a franchise system. Because, and it's actually a good thing and important for people to know that when you reach out and you apply for a franchise, they can't tell you what you're going to make, right? Because based upon your location, based upon honestly, if you care, right? If you go back to the movie The Founder, original McDonald's were sold to a bunch of country club members that never went to them, right? And those businesses did not do near as well as the ones where he eventually went to a bunch of mom and pops and people that wanted to work in the stores and own their own piece of the American dream. And those stores went through the roof, right? So there's variations in there. What I like to do with the franchisees that talk to me is I let them talk to my franchisees all across the country, and they can talk with them about what they're doing in sales and what they're doing in revenue. There's a franchise disclosure document that goes through a lot of the information, but the best thing that you can do is talk with people that are already owning the stores. Unfortunately, because of legal stuff, I can't get into our profit margins and
Yeah.
what we do. My success is not your success, but that
Yeah.
doesn't mean that your success can't be more than my success. It just depends on how much people want it. What we are doing is helping people create a repeatable system that they can go in and they can know what their cogs will be. They can know what their rent, they can know all these kind of things before everything's said and done so that they can build themselves and be part of that system.
Gotcha. We don't have to get into numbers, but you said the cash flow was a very important part of the business. How soon are you cash flowing when you open a franchise?
It really depends on the market, but I've had some stores where literally 2 months in. I mean, the Des Moines store that's near you. I mean, the day after that store opened, it was the number one store in the entire country.
Wow.
So, I mean, the reality is that that's going to start paying our investors within 30 to 60 days of when it opens because we're just winning, right? We have very little competition. We have an amazing product. We have an amazing location. We have an amazing team. And when those things all hit, it's over. Now, in some markets, we're going into markets with more competition. But that doesn't scare me. It just means it takes a little longer to weed out the competition. And I know that in the long run, we're going to be the brand. So every city we go to, even if it takes a little longer, right? We've had some that, it takes a year to get to the point where they start cranking. But guess what? If I built a multifamily building, by the time you get it built and leased up and all this kind of stuff, you're looking at a year plus anyways. So my goal at the end of the day is double digit cash on cash for my investors, right? They invest 100 grand, I give them 10 grand back plus depreciation every year. And if we can do that repeatable, which we can do pretty easily in the restaurants. I hate to say easy, but because they're debt free, we have no note payments. Most of our competition is overpaying and doing their first business for the first time, taking out a lot of debt, all this kind of
Right.
stuff. What we're doing is, guess what? I'm negotiating. I mean, I've got a half a dozen leases on my desk right now. I'm pitting them all against each other to give us the best deals, the best TI. We build the stores at scale so I can open I can open three for every two that my competitor can. And then every month when they've got a $5,000 a month loan payment, we have zero. We pay that to our investors. That's our
Mm,
secret sauce.
okay. And those investors, I want to know more about the conversations with the investors. What are they interested about? What's your demographic for those type of investors?
Yeah, so I have a lot of real estate investors that just want to be, diversified into other things. Or honestly, over the last couple of years, they haven't been super excited about a lot of the real estate deals that have been presented to them, but
Yeah.
they still need their money to work, right? And so what I'm doing is I'm providing, as much as I'm providing a repeatable business, I'm providing a repeatable, investable asset as well, right? And so what we do is we raise money for 3 stores at a time, and the investors own portions of the 3 stores. So as we get them open and as we scale, if somebody owns 4% of 3 restaurants, as if the restaurant's cash flow 10 grand, you get $400. You get 4% of the depreciation. You are a true owner of that. And so that's one thing that I've made very intentionally done throughout this process, is make it so that we're aligned with our investors. When we get distributions, our investors get distributions. And so we are line by line going through it to make sure we can dial things in, scale as well as we can. Because when we scale, they win. And we want to make sure that we win together.
What's your exit strategy if you ever have any?
Oh, it's definitely exitable, right? I mean, because of the fact that I own the rights to the entire state of Texas. I mean, the state of Texas, if it was its own country, would be the 9th largest in the world. Dallas alone will have 9 million people by 2030, and we're going to have dozens of these just in Dallas. So my plan is to build this thing into a name brand, just like Chipotle, where everyone that thinks of wanting a bowl of something, we are going to be world famous for bowls. And so every single day, my goal right now is not necessarily to think about the exit.
Okay.
It's to grow the brand day by day. And as we grow our AUVs, we grow our profitability, and we grow the brand. That, tied with the fact of the territory rights, is a very valuable business.
So it's really not you're not looking to exit this business. You're looking to grow more.
Well, I mean, we're going to grow it over the next 3 to 5 years to make it where somebody wants to come in and really buy it, right? There's a
Oh,
lot of restaurateurs out there that own 5,000 and 10,000 restaurants. Okay. I know these people. They're my mentors. And they're the reason that we're setting them up the way that we are, so that a company can come in and buy 50 of mine and it's nothing to them. My goal is to give them the system where they feel comfortable putting their dollars into it. So all
hmm.
I'm doing right now is building that system. And the bigger that we grow it, the better multiple, right? If you sell one restaurant, you might get 1 to 3 times earnings, because somebody's buying a job at that point. They have to go into the restaurant every single day, have to fix everything. If I sell somebody a batch of 50, guess what? All the management teams, the accounting, everything is in place where they can walk in and just instantly have it's like buying a fully leased multifamily building compared to building one from scratch.
Hmm.
And there's a reason that investors pay way more and better cap rates on 60 units compared to 4, right? Because when you have scale and you have scale of economy, it's worth a lot more to the people, especially the people that want to put big dollars to work.
Right. And from those conversations, doesn't seem like you are looking a lot into real estate for the multifamily side.
Not right now.
No.
No, I mean, I've got my opinions on what I think is going to happen with multifamily over the next couple of years. I just think there's a lot of syndicators that got themselves into some real trouble and put money to work. And I'm happy. I'm not shy about what I think is going to happen. So
What
you
do you
just feel
think?
free to ask away.
What do you think?
I mean, listen, at the end of the day, when you buy things at record rents and record low cap rates, you need to sell it at record rents and record low cap rates. And because of interest rates and what's happened, record low cap rates are never going to happen again. At least not until 15 years from now, if we have some crazy thing where we get back down. But listen, the 2 and 3% interest rates only happened because we were in that huge pandemic where the government printed trillions of dollars to try and get us back to even, right? And give people some money so that our economy didn't completely fall apart. Do we need another event like that for people to be able to sell these properties? I sure hope not. But then what happens when they buy the property at the record rent, right? Let's say the property is worth 2 million and all of a sudden they pay 3 million for it. Well, now your property taxes just went up 50%. And guess what? Your insurance as well, and all these kind of things. And then what happens is, if you're not able to get rents even higher, by just buying the property, your income shrinks. And if you take a shrinking NOI, divide it by a raising cap rate, all of your equity's gone.
Yeah.
I don't have to do the math very hard for people, but if you take a 5 cap and then turn it into a 6 cap, which has already happened. Okay, if you bought a 5 cap a year ago, it is already a 6, probably a 6.5 cap. You bought a 6 cap a year ago, it's probably a 7 cap at least. The reality is that there is a between what they can get for interest from the government. Like right now, T-bills you can get 5%. Why would I go buy a Chick-fil-A at a 3.5 cap or a multifamily at a 2.5 cap? People were doing this crazy stuff out there and leveraging all of this for essentially just because the government had free money. And I don't think that that's a sustainable business model. And if your entire business and your growth is off of cheap interest rates and raising rents, we could be in trouble when the economy does take that dip, which it's already starting to.
Okay, I see. I see what you're saying. Yeah, I actually was just having a conversation yesterday with an insurance agent for a commercial property, and he says that insurance is through the roof. Literally,
Oh yeah,
it's every time is gonna make deals less appealing to investors.
absolutely. Yeah, I was just talking to a guy yesterday that a couple days ago, sorry, in Florida, one of his properties went up by $250,000 a year in insurance. Because in
Yeah,
Florida, they've had these terrible weather and hurricanes and destruction, and insurance companies are just refusing to go insure things.
yeah.
Even here in Iowa, we've now seen where certain insurance companies are no longer taking on wind damage or certain different things. And so the policies are just as
Cosmetics.
expensive, but they're not actually covering as much stuff as they used to.
Yeah. He was talking to
If
me.
you take all this information, you shrink your NOI, I'm telling you, man. I mean, once the debt recycles, if you buy something, it appraises off of your current rents, your current NOI, all that kind of stuff, right? But in commercial, we're all on 5-year arms, right? In general, nobody has 20 and 30-year debt. Banks won't give it on commercial and multifamily. So what happens is 3 to 5 years down the road, people need to refi. And most of the time they're used to refining and the property's gone up because they've raised rents and all this kind of stuff. But right now, what's happening is rents nationwide just started to decline. If you have declining rents with increased expenses and you go from a big NOI to a medium NOI, reverse that into your cap rate on the appraisal and you are in trouble.
You bought higher than it is worth now.
Oh my gosh, man. I know people that they've already lost their entire down payment on property if they had to sell it right now. And the key is going to be that people need to just figure out a way. They're just going to have to hold these properties longer than they ever expected. If they were planning on exiting in 3 years, guess what? It could be 13 years by the time that you exit based upon these wild prices. And it's just going to be a different ball game than we've seen over the last few years.
Right. And maybe this is the perfect opportunity to start looking some downtrends on the purchase price for most of those commercial properties based on the NOI, right?
Yeah,
From your
absolutely.
experience, do you have any source of creative finance aspect to the way that you acquire these businesses?
Yeah, so we're raising money and doing this debt free. So again, what we do is we take 3 store batches and we create an LLC that literally people can invest into, and then they own a portion of that LLC that has multiple restaurants inside of it. And
Okay.
so rather than going traditional funding, we're using private dollars, and our investors love it because they can go eat at a restaurant and then next quarter get a check back from it, right? And so it's creating this system where people can see and touch things that they can invest in. And I think that's my secret sauce is making, people want to invest into things around them. At the end of the day, people are tired of just investing into Apple and Microsoft because what do we always see, right? All of a sudden I turn on the news station and some CFO sleeps with their accountant or whatever and their stock drops 20%. I'm sitting here like, wait a minute, I didn't do anything wrong. Why did my investment go down 20%? And people want to be more, they want to touch and see the things that they can invest into more. And they're tired of
Mm,
just this magical, you have 47 times multiple earnings on whatever company. And we have to hope and pray that we get to 65 to be able to enjoy this. Like, that's
not
not
worth it.
life to me. I just think that, how many times have you heard of people that they get to retirement age and then 2 years after they retire, they're dead, right? So they've waited their entire life, they've worked their entire life, and they finally get to that point. I really believe it with investing in things around us that produce cash flow. You can create the life that you want and actually add value to the communities and things that you invest into, right? We're bringing new restaurants, healthy meals, buildings, apartments, all these kind of things we're bringing to the communities that we're involved in. And through that, then also distributing back to the communities through distributions.
Hmm. Okay. And those investors that it's private equity, right? Like that's the biggest thing. And the LLC with the different companies coming into one place, the returns are completely different because people don't stop eating.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, right, there's seasonality to it, but I mean, I have the data of 70 restaurants across the country. I know what the average unit does. If I know what the average unit does, I can work that back into a rent that makes sense and a business model that guarantees to cash flow. And when I'm talking about, in the state of Iowa, there's 14 or 15 potential markets that we can go after. And so I'm always having the landlords compete against each other for who wants to give me the best deal. And whoever gives me the best deal that works off of the AUV that I think, that gives me predictable income that I know I can give back to our investors. And when you
Mm.
start talking about the state of Texas, bro, when you start talking about the state of Texas, I literally can spray as wide as I want to find these perfect spots, right? We're working on run right now where rent is half what it should be. And I'm 2 doors down from a Crumble anchored by a Kroger, right? And the reality is, and if that one didn't work out, we'll go down the block, 7 miles. And you take Dallas that has 9 million people and 100 miles across. All we can do is all day long, there's another business going out, there's another building being built, there's another something. And these landlords want brands and they want established brands. And so when I bring them a brand like Everbowl that's debt free, we've got a large operating team, we're really well funded. All of a sudden, they're rolling out the red carpet for us, and that's the big important thing right now. Because in multifamily, right, you're chasing the market a little bit. What's market rents going to do? Are they going up? There's a few things that are out of your control, such as property taxes, insurance, regulations, things like that. But in the restaurant game, if we know what the AUV is, we know what our expenses are before we even open. I mean, we literally know what our expenses are of the entire business before we open, because most of restaurants is proportional. If you sell more food, you order more food. If you sell more food, you hire more people, right? And so once you get over that barrier, now that's when it starts getting good.
And these landlords, when they're looking for these returns, how do you acquire these leases? Are they triple net leasings? Are they
Yeah, so I mean, typically we're going in and just being normal tenants, right? And the
okay?
landlords, they're just getting their rent check and that's it. We have some landlords that are actually invested into us, and then we have places in their businesses as well. But normally they're not, they don't go together. It's a
Okay.
separate deal. If a person happens to own a building and also wants to invest into our restaurants, great. But the landlords don't have an interest in the actual business itself other than the rent that we pay.
Okay. Do you think that that's a conflict of interest? That's why you don't do it that often?
No, not at all. I mean,
No.
honestly, the landlords want us to be successful. They want us to win. The more that we win, the more that we pay rent, and then 5 years from now, we renew the lease. And 5 years from then, we renew the lease again. So the landlords, I mean, if a landlord has trouble with their tenants being profitable, they're not going to be a good landlord, because
Mm.
essentially, if they're not profitable tenants, then the strip mall is empty.
Let me ask you, what do you project for the next 5 years for your business or for what you're growing?
Oh, we're going big. I mean, we're scaling to the point right now where we can open a restaurant a month, and I think I can do that for the next several years, and that's just Everbowl. So if I zoom out a little bit, I think there's going to be other franchise systems and other repeatable systems that we're going to bring in. And if I zoom out even a little bit more, I think we're going to start building strip malls and putting 2 or 3 of our businesses in it, where we are the landlord, we own the building, we own the businesses, we're diversifying ourselves across a bunch of different ways, and then going into cities like Des Moines, like Dallas, like wherever, and bringing new businesses to the area while also stacking the deck in our favor of knowing what the strip mall is going to look like, what the rent's going to be, making sure that we don't get into bad relationships with greedy landlords, and I mean, essentially stacking the deck for our investors. That's my goal.
If anybody wants to invest with you on the Everbowl, how can they how can
Yeah,
they
so
reach
just
out to you?
sloan-capital.com. And we actually have an entire investor portal. But what I ask people to do is just reach out through our contact us and let's start with a conversation and make sure that it makes sense, right? I don't have a huge investor team or anything along the lines of that. Every single one of my investors has my cell phone number. It's been the same number for 20 years. And so what it usually starts with is just a conversation of, I have dollars that I need to diversify, and then we talk about what's important with them and their goals. My plan is to compound with people forever. I say it all the time, but I really mean that. I don't want to find new investors every 6 months or 12 months. I see these guys that they burn through investors and stuff like that. But I really, some of my first investors from the first syndication real estate deal that I ever did, they were also the first investors in my restaurants when I brought it to them. And as we bring other stuff, and the more that they win, the more that we can compound and grow
Right.
again in the future. And so, my main focus over these next 5 years is just continue to do the things that I said I'm going to do for our investors. Because right now, I think a lot of people are not, they said they were going to do all these fancy things for their investors and buy these properties and all this kind of stuff, and they're not doing it. And so right now, if we can just simply do what we said we're going to do, we win, and we win big.
So syndicators are not something that you think is going to be profitable the next couple of years for multifamily?
I just think that there's a lot of new syndicators or people that bought 1 or 2 properties in 2017 and 2019, and then all of a sudden bought 15 properties at the height of the market, right? And those are the people that are going to get in trouble. But the way that the real estate market works is if all of a sudden 6% of people get in trouble and you bring all that supply on the market, it's a big deal, right? It hurts everybody and creates opportunity for everybody. And so I think there's going to be some pain, right? We're 2 years away from a big recycling of a lot of debt where people are going to have to go from 3 and 4% mortgages to 7 to 9% mortgages. And that alone will make, and then if all of a sudden, if you invested in something and you thought it was going to be this great gig and, oh my gosh, multifamily is easy, but now you're getting these calls at 2 a.m. because somebody clogged a pipe and this happens and that happens. Now your interest rate went up, your insurance went up, property taxes. The amount of people that are going to be looking to exit is going to be a lot, right? Because they thought they were buying into something, and all of a sudden they're like, whoa, my gosh, I bought myself a job. And again, that's where opportunity happens. Everybody chased investment real estate over the last few years. I mean, everybody was a genius. Everybody could raise money. Everybody overpaid for properties. And so as that comes, full circle, I've just kind of sat back and I told our investors, like, I don't want to put my money in this, so I'm not going to put your money in this. And I said, rather than doing this, here's how we go take advantage of the situation, which is what we're doing, right? Because as they're still building more strip malls, small business owners are not wanting to open businesses as much as they were before. Prices are up dramatically due to inflation. Interest rates are up dramatically. So it's not as fun and sexy to build a business as it was 2 years ago. Guess what? That means landlords need to fill their properties even more, and that's where we step in.
Wow, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Justin, it's been real. This is a lot of information, and I know that everybody is gonna think the same, but it was super interesting. I would like to hear more of what you think about multifamily, but we're gonna cut it short for now. Respect your time. If you made it this far on the video, subscribe, hit the like button. If you have any questions, follow him on social media, and I'll see you guys on the next one.